I, Jessica, was the breadwinner of the house when I was married to my husband John. I won't exactly call myself the breadwinner because my husband did have a job and contributed. However, his salary was way less than mine, so I ended up paying for most of our things. I never had a complaint about that because he was my husband. However, I did draw the line when his mom, Tanya, would ask me for handouts. Here is one thing I should tell you guys about Tanya. She absolutely hated me. She hated the fact that I earned more than her son and her husband. In fact, she often told me that a bimbo like me should never be able to get her hands on so much money. Thankfully, my husband was always quick to defend me and shut her up. It also helped that my father-in-law, Henry, was a great guy and always stood up for me. John and I had a pretty good relationship throughout the years. We married fairly early since I was financially well settled and wanted to start a family early. John was completely on board as well. We stayed in the house that I bought before we got married. It had a mortgage, but I was able to pay for it just fine. That was another thing that bothered Tanya a lot. One day she said, "It's so unfair that a dumb girl like you gets to live in a house like this. Meanwhile, hard-working people like us still have to rent." I must say that I am lucky to be able to buy a good house, but I don't appreciate how you called me dumb and undeserving, Tanya. Who cares about what you think? Some women like you can just bat their eyes at their bosses and get great jobs, while men like John and Henry are stuck in low-paying jobs just because they are men. That is very unfair of you to say, Tanya. Jessica is a smart woman and has a college degree as well. That's why she's able to get such a good job. It's all her own skills and has nothing to do with what you are saying. That's right, Mom. Jessica is not dumb and did not get her degree by batting her eyes at people. You need to tone it down a little, Mom. Tanya was always jealous of me and my life, which I'm sure is apparent from this exchange. That was something I never found amusing. It gave way to bad relationships, and I really did want Tanya to like me. However, eventually her hate for me made me step away from her. But Tanya never stopped asking me for favors, which sometimes I just did because John pleaded with me. The real trouble began when my mother passed away, leaving me with a fairly decent inheritance. Not in millions, but good enough for middle-class people like me. After my mom passed away, I was in a terrible mental state. She was my last living family member, and her death really shook me up. John was of great help during this time and supported me as best he could. However, what annoyed me was that he constantly kept bringing up my inheritance. He said things like, "So, have you thought more about your inheritance?" "What should I think about it, John? I have put it in a separate bank account, and that's it." "Yeah, I know that already, Jessica, but surely you have some plans for it. It's a lot of money, so you have lots of options to consider." "Look, John, I don't care about the inheritance right now. I'm already having a hard time getting over my mom's death. The inheritance is the last thing I want to worry about." "I know that you haven't been able to make hard decisions like this, Jessica. I care about your mental health, so I don't want you to stress about it. That's why I've been thinking on your behalf about what to do about it." Conversations like these have happened a lot of times already. I was getting sick of it, and John just wouldn't stop pushing. So one day I took up his offer to talk and said, "I have a feeling you want to tell me something about the inheritance. Whatever it is, just spit it out. There is no reason to skirt around the topic." "I'm glad you want to hear me out, Jessica. Trust me. I have come up with a brilliant idea. Mom has been looking at some houses, but they are sadly out of my parents' budget. So I was thinking, why don't we help them out with the down payment and furniture?" "Are you kidding me right now, John? I'm not buying your mean and shameless mother a house. What makes you think I would agree with this?" "Why don't you agree with this, Jessica? You know Mom and Dad want to buy a house. When Mom is looking at houses within their budget, it is falling short of her expectations. It's hard for her to see you have such a nice house while she has to compromise. Well, if she can't compromise, she needs to get a job for herself. She stopped working out of her own free will, so she can definitely start again. She can earn her own house, just like I did. I'm not giving anything to that vile woman after how she treats me. John and I had a huge fight about this issue. However, since it was my inheritance, John had to relent because he couldn't do anything about it. My money was already in a private bank account that he couldn't touch anyway, not that I didn't trust him. I was just super hurt by the fact that my husband would bother me about these things when I was mourning. It hadn't even been a month at that point, and he was thinking about making me give his mom a house with my dead mom's money. It was just ridiculous. Eventually the fights died down and we made up. John apologized for springing his idea up on me and told me that he wouldn't push it. I was stupid enough to take his word for it. John did stick to his word and didn't bring up the issue again. In fact, the problem solved itself when John told me that Tanya was back working so that they could save up for a house they liked. I was glad that we were not fighting about this anymore. But my peaceful life changed when I heard my husband talk in his sleep. He had this habit and did it at times when he was super stressed. I knew how to deal with him properly. However, that night I just didn't expect him to say what he said in his sleep. "Mom, why are you stressing so much? You're making me more anxious with your stress." "Hey, honey, what's wrong?" "Oh, you have to wake up. It's just a dream." "You are overthinking this, Mom. We have everything under control. She isn't smart enough to figure it out." "John, you really need to—" "Mom, relax. The bimbo will never have a clue about how we spent her inheritance. You're worrying for no reason. I'm handling everything." The rest of his words were too slurred to make sense. I honestly felt like I was caught in a trance. I didn't know if I was hearing things or if my husband had seriously just called me a bimbo. Yes, I happen to be blonde, but as you can see from my career, I am a dumb girl as my husband was making out to be. In fact, my husband had never actually talked to me like that before. Most of the time he praises me even when his mother demeaned me. I thought he was being a caring husband by standing up for me. But the words he said in his sleep were making me question everything. That night, I pondered over it until it was morning. I went off to work trying to delude myself into thinking that my husband was just having a stupid dream. But there was also that possibility that my husband was paranoid and stressed about something which made him talk in his sleep. He kept talking about how I would never find out what happened to my inheritance. That was starting to really bother me, so very impulsively, while at work, I pulled up my bank account to see if anything was amiss. My heart sank when I saw that my account was missing quite a lot of money. My eyes were bulging out of my sockets and I started to hyperventilate right in the break room. John's words from last night came rushing back to me and I felt like I had lost the ground beneath my feet. Thankfully, lunch was almost over, so no one was around to witness my little breakdown. I sat in the break room in shock while trying to calm myself down and think straight. I knew then and there that John and Tanya had planned something. I needed to dig deeper and get to the bottom of it. For some odd reason, my mind kept telling me that this had something to do with Tanya and Henry's new house. So after I left work, I called Henry and told him that we needed to talk. I said, "I'm sorry to be disturbing you like this, Henry, but there is something I need to know. Have you guys needed money recently?" "What? No, there's nothing like that. We're doing well enough right now." "I'm sure there hasn't been an emergency cash crisis in your life, but what about the house? Did you by any chance fall short of cash or maybe ran into some trouble that required money? I'm sorry for being so blunt and invasive, but I need to know." I don't know what to tell you, Jessica. Nothing shady is going on right now. The house is coming along fine. John is being such a good son in helping us pay for our new house. We don't have to worry about that at all. Wait, what? John has been helping you pay for the house? I was dumbstruck with this new information that wasn't known to me at all. All this while, I knew that it was Tanya and Henry who were paying for their own house. Now, Henry was saying that John was also helping him pay for the house. My mind was a mess while I tried to figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, Henry understood that there was something amiss and said, "What's the matter, Jessica? You seem to be surprised at the fact that John is helping us pay for our house." "I am surprised about this, Henry. I never knew that John was helping you pay for the house." "You didn't know? But John would have told you, I'm sure. He has given us money for the down payment of the house. We are only a few steps away from closing the sale." "I had no idea about this, Henry. John never told me that he was helping you with the down payment. All this while I knew that Tanya went back to work and together you two managed to fund your new house." "What are you talking about, Jessica? Tanya's not working. She's still a stay-at-home wife. She never went back to work." Henry seemed as surprised as I was with everything that had been unraveled in our unprompted conversation. My mind was now spinning with all this new information. Even Henry was taken aback and starting to notice that something was terribly wrong. I said, "So you're telling me that Tanya never went back to work? She's still unemployed? And Henry is paying for your house?" "Yes, Jessica, that's what I know. What gave you the idea that Tanya had gone back to work and she was contributing?" "It was John and Jessica who told me about it. I didn't assume anything, Henry. I'm telling you what I was told." "What on earth is going on here? Why would they lie about this to you? This is so confusing." Henry was now racking his brain trying to figure out what was going on. I was finally starting to realize that we had both been lied to. My mother-in-law was faking her job to throw off any suspicions that I might have. Meanwhile, my husband had lied to his dad, saying that he was helping them pay for the house. Turns out me and Henry both didn't know that his house was being funded by my inheritance money. And it was being done without my permission. There is something really fishy going on, Henry. That's why I called you in the first place. Last night I heard John talk in his sleep again. He said that I would never find out what he and Tanya did with my inheritance. Today I checked and saw that a good chunk of my inheritance is gone from my account. So my son doesn't have enough money to make the down payment? But Tanya said that he got a promotion. Also, how did your money disappear like that? I have no idea, Henry. I'm starting to think that John and Tanya are behind this. Look, John doesn't earn enough to pay your down payment. Tanya lied to you. John didn't get any promotion in the last 5 years. You were saying that Tanya is not also working? Then where is the money coming from, Henry? Oh, God, Jessica, you might be right. Maybe John did end up taking your money. There can be no other explanation for this right now. We have both been deceived, Jessica. I don't know what to do now. Well, I need to first find solid proof that it was indeed my husband and Tanya who made this whole plan. I also need to know how they managed to get into my private bank account to steal my money. Henry agreed with my plan and promised not to confront Tanya and John right now. I also promised him that I would inform him about my findings soon. Henry is a very good guy who genuinely doesn't take handouts. He is the hard-working type of guy who likes to live life by his means. Since he loves his son so much, he probably couldn't say no when he insisted that he would help. Plus, I found out that Tanya had also faked John's promotion to Henry so that he wouldn't get suspicious about where my husband was getting the money. John and Tanya had cleverly planned everything and kept us both in the dark. They played us for fools. It took me days to find out the whole truth of the matter. My suspicions were right. John and Tanya did end up withdrawing money from my bank account, specifically from the one where I kept my inheritance. I didn't have a message alert switched on, so I wasn't immediately aware of the withdrawal. I went to the bank and was told that someone showed up as me, signed papers, and made a check withdrawal. They refused to allow me to see who did it because they needed a police report for that. But in my mind, I knew that it was my husband and Tanya. Tanya actually had a similar build to me and the same hair color. So to a bank employee who has seen me only once, this may not have been suspicious. Henry and Tanya took advantage of my deteriorating mental state to make their own dreams come true. I was enraged beyond belief. I told Henry everything, and together we made a plan. Henry drove Tanya to our house while I was waiting with John to welcome them. John and Tanya only knew that we were having a family dinner and nothing more. However, when we sat down to dinner, I said, "Hey, John, you know I found out something terrible yesterday. Someone has taken out money from my bank account." "What? Who would do that, Jessica? What account is this?" "The one where I kept my inheritance money, John. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about calling the police tomorrow." No. Why do you need to do that? I'm sure you have replaced the money somewhere or withdrawn from it accidentally. There's no reason to assume the worst. Yes, give it some time, Jessica. I'm sure there's an explanation about what happened to the money. There's no reason to involve the cops right now. John and Tanya looked pretty shocked and scared when I brought up the issue. It was clear to me and Henry that they hadn't expected to get caught so easily. I don't know what they had planned to do once I found out about the withdrawal, but I knew that they hadn't expected it to happen so soon. They visibly panicked and jumped right off their chair when I mentioned getting the cops involved immediately. It was a little funny, but Henry and I maintained our comparison. He even looked at Tanya funny and said, "I don't see why she shouldn't involve the cops straight away. The sooner this is solved, the better." "Dad, you don't understand. These things are very sensitive since it's about money. Jessica's already in a very vulnerable state right now. Let's not make her stress more." "Oh, I'm pretty stressed about the money, actually. I would rather have my money safely back in my account as soon as possible." "Yeah, go ahead and file a police report, Jessica. You deserve to have your money back. You know what? Since you are so vulnerable right now, I will even go with you to the police station." John and Tanya were getting paler and paler by every passing second. They were gulping hard and looking at each other while trying to figure out how to stop us. I was watching them panic and fall into the trap they had set for me. I wanted to laugh at the way they were behaving, but my anger clouded over all my other emotions. I wanted to yell at them for being nasty thieves, but I couldn't do that yet. After a lot of back and forth, I said, "I don't think there's a reason for me to waste time anymore. I will be going to the cops for sure." "Don't be so rash, Jessica. Just leave it alone. Can't you just sleep on it for a few days?" "No, I don't think I can. The more I think about it, the more I'm bothered by this. Actually, why don't we go to the cops right now and get this out of the way? It's only 5 p.m. now. We'll be back in time for dinner." "Seems like a good idea, Jessica. Let's just go down to the police station right now. John and Tanya can catch up in the meantime." Henry and I were starting to walk out the door when John and Tanya stopped us. They finally realized that their game was up. It was time for them to confess, and they did. My husband and mother-in-law were looking down at the floor the whole time while they told us what they had planned. They had planned to use my money to fund their house. In the end, I said, "Why did you do this, John?" "I always dreamed of buying a house for my parents, but I knew I couldn't afford it. I asked you for help, Jessica, but you didn't want to give me your money, so I had to do this. I only wanted to do something nice for my parents." "What you did was wrong, John. We never asked you for anything, John. I don't know what made you think we needed a big house. But knowing Tanya, I think it was your mother who demanded that you get her a big house." "Can you really blame me, Henry? All I wanted was to live in a nice house like my son. If a stupid bimbo like Jessica can stay in a house like this, why can't I?" Careful there, Tanya. Don't forget the fact that you stole from me and committed a lot of crimes by doing so. If I want to, I can go to the cops and get you arrested. Tanya was being a witch to me even after getting caught, so I quickly reminded her of the fact that I still had the power to get her arrested. That's when the tearworks and begging started. Tanya suddenly realized she was in deep trouble. She had tears in her eyes and quickly changed tune to say, Okay, I'm sorry, Jessica. It was a big mistake. We are family, so let's just forgive each other. There's no reason to get the cops involved. Mom is right, Jessica. No matter what, she's still your family. You shouldn't be threatening her like this. Oh, you have a problem with me threatening your mother, John? Well, guess what? I can threaten you too. If I make a police complaint, you will be arrested as well. I don't think Henry will be here to bail any of you out. Yep. I was running away as far as I could. In fact, after today, I want nothing to do with John or Tanya anymore. Tanya's entitlement has always been a problem, but she went too far this time. I've made the decision to separate from her now. I don't want to be with someone so vile and cruel. Same here, Henry. I guess we will both be looking at divorce lawyers soon. I'm done with you, John. Don't think I will let you get away with this. You and your mom called me a bimbo and tried to scam me while I was vulnerable. I will now show you what happens when you mess with me. John and Tanya were now looking at me and Henry with pure fear. They hadn't realized that the day would turn out to become their worst nightmare. Tanya was now begging Henry not to leave her while John was trying to get my attention as I started to walk away from him. He was on the verge of tears and kept saying sorry repeatedly over and over again. John and Tanya even promised to give me the money back so that we could go back to normal. I laughed at that and didn't even bother to reply. The real fun happened when there was a knock at the door. When John went to open the door, he was greeted by 2 cops who were at the door to arrest him and Tanya. That's right, guys. I had already called the cops on them after filing a police report that morning. There was no space for any compromise. I went ahead with the police report as soon as I mustered the courage to end my marriage. Henry agreed with my decision and accompanied me as well. Tanya and John did throw mini tantrums when escorted to the cop cars, but no one paid any heed to them. Due to some complications, John and Tanya ended up spending the night in jail. John was released the next day on bail since he paid out of pocket, but Tanya remained in jail because Henry wasn't busting her out. John returned home and tried to beg me to stay. I informed him that I had already called a lawyer and told him to prepare the divorce papers, and I was going forward with my case against them too. There was no changing my mind. John did end up transferring my money back once he got out of jail. I informed the cops about it, but the case of identity theft and document forgery was still on. As I write this story, Tanya has been granted bail by some family members, but is miserable because Henry is divorcing her. We live in an at-fault divorce state, so both Henry and I are going to make it big in the divorce. John and Tanya are looking at a small prison sentence and a good fine right now. Let's also add the fact that they are completely alone now that their spouses are divorcing them. Henry and I compared notes and found out that John and Tanya no longer speak to each other because they ended up blaming each other for what happened. So, their nasty plan never made them heroes, and in the end, landed them in prison.